13 phones, iPhones, whatever they were, and just banging the heck out of them. How about the acid wash of the emails that didn't mean anything? How about the 33,000 missing emails that were acid washed?
A new report, the Justice Department granting immunity to the computer official who bleached out Hillary Clinton's private email server. So anyone looking for answers won't get any. We've got Benghazi Select Committee Chairman. He's in disbelief.
They gave immunity to the trigger man. That's why those of us who used to do it for a living didn't like to give immunity. That's why you never heard me calling for giving Brian Pagliano immunity. You better be right on who the trigger person is. You better be right on who the culprit is if you're going to give transactional immunity. And if that's what they did, then they immunized the one person that you would most want to prosecute for the destruction of government records.
Yeah.
It is frankly stunning.
To the watchdogs who sue the government for Hillary's emails, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton. Tom, what do you make of the fact that the Department of Justice has now given, his name is Paul Combetta. He was at Platte River Networks. He oversaw the Clinton server. He's now got immunity. What does this mean?
Well, I don't understand what type of immunity he has. My understanding is Justice Department doesn't give immunity from prosecution in the sense that you get a get-out-of-jail-free card just because you talk to the government. Typically, you tell the government what information you have, and the government makes no promises. They will highlight your cooperation in case any prosecution occurs. They won't use what you say against them, against you necessarily, but they could use it to get other information to pursue and prosecute you. The fact that this evidently didn't occur shows further the unusual circumstances and frankly, the compromised investigation by both the Justice Department and the FBI. Why would they be giving immunity to someone who obstructed a congressional investigation, arguably, without letting Congress in on it, or at least acknowledging when Mr. Comey first announced he refused to prosecute Mrs. Clinton that these issues had been raised but tossed aside by the FBI and the Justice Department? By the way, the Justice Department is the one responsible here. The FBI can't give immunity to anybody. It's only the Justice Department that does it.
All right. So does this mean that the Department of Justice can or cannot basically conduct a probe of this outside computer expert who was helping the Clintons with the survey? And does it mean that that Congress can't hold hearings and call him in if in fact he does have immunity?
Well, it depends on the type of immunity. It could have been a temporary transactional immunity, as Mr. Gowdy referenced. It could be a broader immunity. But typically speaking, the immunity is more narrow, and it ought not to prevent any future prosecution. So on the one hand, I agree, it's upsetting that this immunity was granted when no one knew about it, and to this key figure who destroyed records he knew should have been preserved, perhaps in league with Mrs. Clinton's lawyers. But don't let anyone fool you that it would necessarily prevent a future prosecution on this issue of either the person who did the deletions or the others who seemingly conspired with him.
Back in February, according to the New York Times, this gentleman said, I don't recall deleting emails. I don't know how you don't recall deleting emails. I mean, that seems like a bit of a stretch. But, you know, Tom, we put together the timeline of this whole controversy, and it did start early in March. The New York Times reporting the use of a personal server, and then on the 3rd and the 4th, Congress put out a preservation order for the emails, and on the 9th, the firm managing the server, which this gentleman worked for, was instructed to keep all the emails. Then a couple weeks later, Hillary's legal team held a conference call with that firm, and under a week later, it deleted the emails after being told not to. So, again, we don't have any proof just yet, Tom, right, that the Clinton team instructed him to delete the emails, do we?
No, well, there's some smoke there, and one of the reasons we don't have proof per se is because some privilege was asserted. If it was an attorney-client privilege, it's arguably Mrs. Clinton's privilege to assert. But what did Mr. Kendall and Mrs. Clinton's other lawyers know about this deletion? When did they know it, and why didn't they inform Congress? And frankly, the courts. I mean, we had open federal court cases. We had sought early in March as well a status conference with one court judge about Benghazi emails we thought might be at issue here. And still they went ahead and deleted emails, and the lawyers knew about that happening and did nothing. It's inconceivable that there ought to be not more prosecutions or at least investigation
So
here.
to wrap it up for the viewer, a private server put in the home, the basement of the Clinton home, more than 30,000 emails erased. We don't know if they were considered personal, but we don't know if they had involved the Clinton Foundation. Right, Tom? Is that it?
We don't know even those numbers. The FBI refers us to the campaign website to figure out how many emails Mrs. Clinton had.
All right.